What's up, guys? So this story is really interesting. I came across this very touching article, and it talks about Elvis when he was a little kid with his mom Gladys and dad Vernon. This story comes from an actual interview that Vernon gave in 1978. And you can think about everything that was going on in Vernon's life. You know, in 1978, he was alone. You know, he didn't have his wife, Gladys. She had died. He had divorced from Dee. I believe he had a fiance at this time. But, you know, Elvis had been gone for a year. So anyway, he goes into the story, and I find it very interesting. I want to share it with you. He was talking to this reporter about how he believed that the Lord's hand was on Elvis's life from a very young age. And just a few things about his parenting. He said that he never tried to push Elvis in one direction or the other. He said, like, some people want to push their kid to be, you know, a football player or whatever, but he always let Elvis kind of choose however he wanted to go. But he said they always felt that God's hand was on his life. And they felt that ever since Garen died. And he felt like God was telling him that Elvis's life would be special, and he was soon comforted and totally content with just the three of them, Gladys, Vernon, and Elvis. He gave a story about how, you know, one time Vernon wanted him to go hunting with Elvis, and Elvis said, "Daddy, I don't want to kill birds." I just thought that was so cute. And, you know, you could see, you know, the sensitive heart that Elvis had even at an early age. So anyway, getting back to the subject of this video. Now, this took place when Elvis was 6 years old. It was in 1941. So this was before widespread penicillin and antibiotics. Like, antibiotics was just kind of being discovered and coming into play. But by 1941, this wasn't on, like, you know, your local corner store. Not every doctor was equipped with this, especially because doctors were making house calls at this time. So what happened? Elvis was 6 years old, and he developed an acute tonsillitis with a fever. And he was on the verge of convulsions. Now, this is all verbatim. I mean, you know, I'm summarizing this, but this is actually from Vernon Presley's interview in 1978. He describes all of this. And we don't obviously have medical records of this because, remember, this was 1941 in the South. Okay? You know, he didn't have hospital records, but this is what Vernon actually said. And I think I'll put the link to this article in the description of this video, so check it out. He said that Elvis was on the verge of convulsions, had a fever, acute tonsillitis. He said him and Gladys were afraid that they were going to lose him. A doctor was at the house, and the doctor told Vernon and Gladys that he can't do anything else, which means, you know, I think he's going to die. And he said maybe you should call another doctor. So in other words, this doctor had no idea what else to do with Elvis, and, you know, they were really scared. So the doctor told him, you know, maybe you should find another doctor. And Vernon says that, in effect, is exactly what we did. He says, my wife and I would turn to prayer. I believe in prayer. I believe in a healing God. I believe in a God that can work miracles. He says, so that day I prayed to God that he would miraculously heal our child. We prayed together, Vernon says, and separately. Vernon says, by that night, I could see Elvis was better. Vernon says, God gave us the miracle we'd asked for in healing our son and reassuring me that Elvis's life was special. Now, all lives are special, and Vernon says that. He says that he didn't know that Elvis was going to be a famous singer or actor. He just felt that God's hand was upon him to make a contribution in society. Vernon says that, you know, you could be he said he didn't know he was going to be famous, obviously, but he says, you know, you could be a farmer, construction worker, truck driver, whatever area you're in life, the Lord can use you. And he said that they felt the Lord really had his hand on Elvis's life, which I think is evident. Now, I didn't really realize how spiritual Vernon was, but Vernon was a deacon in the local church when Elvis was a kid. He grew up in the South, and we all know the stories of Vernon and Gladys taking Elvis to an Assemblies of God church when he was a child. And, you know, Elvis recounts that earlier. And if you want further information on this and quotes from what Elvis said, scroll a little down in the video portions of this channel, and you can find out the video that I made on Elvis and whether he believes in God or that. But I just thought this article was so touching. And whether you believe these events happened or not, whether you think Vernon was just telling some type of story, to get some hype or to think that he's something special, you can believe that. But this is what Vernon said, take it or leave it. And, you could really understand how these events could happen. It wasn't, 1990 and you just go down to the hospital and it's something real quick. This was something back in that time where they didn't have quick, ready cures for everything. So I just thought this was a very interesting story and a very touching story. I really suggest you go down in the description of this video and just read the whole thing, because there's so many more topics from this interview that are just really, for lack of a better term, just touching, because I just find it so sweet. And I wanted to share this little portion of the interview with you. But yeah, I think it's true. I think it really happened. So check it out. So a few quick little facts I want to leave you with before I close out this video. One, Vernon says that medical science hadn't progressed to the point where they could predict that they were going to have twins. So when Elvis came out after Jesse, they were very surprised. And obviously Jesse Guerin came out stillborn. Vernon says that they named Jesse after Vernon's father. And they named Elvis because Elvis is Vernon's middle name. Vernon says that the two twins looked something alike, but they didn't look exactly alike. So they may not have been identical twins. And that's actually pretty interesting because, this is actually what Vernon says. I don't know how many of you actually heard this. I always heard that they were identical twins, but Vernon says they didn't look identical, so I bet that he would have a pretty good eye for that. And I don't know how many of you actually know this, but the reason why Elvis was given the middle name Aaron and Jesse was given the middle name Guerin was because Vernon says that him and Gladys knew a couple who had twins whose names were Guerin and Aaron. So that's how Vernon says they came up with their middle names. So anyway, that's that for this video. I appreciate you guys watching it, and I hope you've all liked it. If you do like it, make sure you hit the like button, and also subscribe if you haven't already. Check me out at ElvisistheMan Instagram. You can DM me your questions. We'll talk in the comments. And also check out some of the links I have in my description for this actual article and the other YouTube channels that I run. So we'll talk to you next time.
Subscribe.